now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you to Becky Burton. She's a sustainability expert and lover of all things green and humans too. If you know her, you know this is true. And that's it. Becky, so the torch is yours and good luck, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. I'm going to share the screen and we'll see if we can get into what we need to. Okay, perfect. So let's talk about biophilia. Okay, so we're ready to go. So thank you. First of all, just thank you so much for waking up today. I know that 9 a.m. is early on a Friday, especially as we start to go into the holidays. So thank you first for that. And I just want to think a little bit like how perfect is biophilia for December? It's the 1 month where we bring in a tree. Most of us in the Western world, at least, finally bring a tree into our home, which is pretty cool. So I love that biophilia is this month's theme. So if biophilia is our theme, we should first start by acknowledging the person who actually invented it, who invented the word. And this is E.O. Wilson. He's an American biologist. He's known in certain circles actually for being the world's leading expert on ants. But more importantly for us and more broadly, he's one of our greatest conservationists, one of the humanity's greatest conservationists. And he's 91 years old now. He's authored so many different books. And so I want to introduce two to you in relation to my own professional journey, why I'm here. I'll give you that sort of intro just so you know who I am and why I'm the speaker today, I suppose. And then I'll go into the promise of what we promised, the delivery of what we promised you, which is what can we learn about creativity from plants? So through the lens of E.O. Wilson, let me introduce you to sort of what I've been working on. So he authored a book just 5 years ago in 2016 called Half Earth. And the idea is if we can protect half of the Earth's land and water, it will actually be enough for 85% or the majority of species to continue thriving. And that, of course, includes us as well. So it was this idea, sort of this breakthrough idea that he introduced after all of his years in conservation and in biology. Let's set aside half of the world. So how does this relate to my work? Well, this is one half of my work. I've been working in sustainability and conservation for about 10 years now. And specifically, I've been focused on doing mining more responsibly. I won't go into too many specifics here because I think that's another discussion for another day. But basically, the important point is that mining is one of the most disruptive things that we do in the world. It literally carves up mountains. It can destroy whole watersheds if it's not done well. And so what I've been focused on, and sort of in my professional life, let's say, it has been focused on how do you actually help mining companies act more responsibly, because if they do, it has major outcomes and really it just helps the world so much in biodiversity, clean water, clean air. So that's where I focus most of my week. But the second place where I do most of my work is aligns with E.O. Wilson's second book, or not second book, but the second book I want to talk to you about. It's actually a book he wrote in 1984. And he invented this term, or at least finally gave a name to the idea of biophilia. And that's this month's theme for Creative Mornings. And biophilia is basically just the idea that as humans, there is deep within us an innate love for the natural world, plants, animals, and that it just is something deep within our DNA. And so that's actually behind the whole idea behind my second, let me say, job or venture, professional work, which is something that I just launched 2 weeks ago called Green Elbows. And so it's the exact same idea as biophilia, this idea that we have this innate love of nature. So the brand, the whole idea is to try and help people connect more with plants. And why did this come about? Well, a couple of years ago, I found my own love of plants. I actually started propagating succulents. If you know me, you'll know that I talk about this a lot. So I have these like little baby succulents that I learned how to grow from a leaf. I think you can see it there. And just watching this and seeing, my gosh, the plant world is so amazing. It's so magical. And I just fell in love with taking care of plants, basically. And as I shared this newfound love with people, I so often heard, I'm the worst with plants. I kill plants all the time. And it honestly, it broke my heart a little bit, because I guess for me, I was finding so much joy in it. And I just thought, gosh, there's so much joy here that I think people are a bit intimidated, actually, sometimes. Either they see these jungle perfect rooms on Instagram that they're like, gosh, I could never do that. Or maybe a couple years ago, they brought home a cactus and it died. And they're like, gosh, if I can even kill a cactus, of course I can't keep plants alive. And so I launched the brand Green Elbows to basically try and remove that intimidation, remove any of the shame around killing plants, to just know, not killing plants, because I don't think that we do. I think they die under our care, which is different. And it happens. I've also done it. And so the idea with Green Elbows is you don't have to have a green thumb. You don't have to be magic at this, and you don't have to dedicate your life to it to find love in taking care of green things. We're naturally good at it because, like E.O. Wilson has showed us, it's innate within us. And so I launched this idea, Green Elbows. So why Green Elbows? Well, they're pivotal to everything you do, right? I'm talking to you right now, I'm using them, texting, eating popcorn, all the good stuff in life is because we have our wonderfully bendy elbows. They're also sometimes awkward, sometimes a little clumsy, we bump them. And they're also, the final thing that I love is there's not a lot of expectation on the elbow, right? We often admire people's eyes or their smile, but we're not usually crushing on someone's elbows. So the idea is, you please bring this innate fundamental part of you, the awkward, sort of messy part of you, and the playful, no expectations part of you. And let's just be human with plants. So that is Green Elbows. So what I actually do with this is, one thing, plant design, helping people bring more green into their patio or into their co-working space, for example. And then the big project that I'm launching next year in Ericeira, where I live, is actually a community garden where I'll bring together a community, and we'll be, it's more than a community garden though, because we're going to be walking hand in hand, learning how to grow our own vegetables, experimenting with all kinds of ways to grow things. And so that's sort of the focus of Green Elbows. So that's where I put my time when I'm not focused on mining. And those are the two things that I do, and sort of why I'm here today. So I want to move away from that intro, and I want to take us into a different space and a different conversation. And to set the stage for that, I want to do what I'm calling an open-eyed meditation. So it will be about a minute long. And the idea is there's a lot, basically, for us to kind of feel what science has shown, which is this, that exposure to nature, whether you're in it or even seeing images of it, really brings up pleasant feelings for us as a species. So it makes us happier, calmer, it reduces stress and fear. There's just a lot of power that comes from being in the plant world. So I would just invite you, if you're looking at your phone or doing something else, to please turn the phone over. Please take a moment while we do this to breathe a little slower. And as we do this, I would also ask you to consider an idea. We're often asked, do you love nature? And I think a lot of us would say yes, easy. But how often do we ask the question, does nature love you? I think there's a lot of proof for that in the world. With the trees that shade us, with juicy oranges, delicious carrots, you can think of a million examples. I do think that it's reciprocal. I think that nature loves us, at least a bit. So I'm going to take us through a little meditation here. I'm going to see if I can get this music to work. We'll see. Okay. Okay, I know that was a little bit short, but hopefully at least it brought us into a little bit of a calmer space. I know for me it did. So now let's talk a little bit about plants and creativity. What can they teach us? So I want to share 3 stories with you, and within each story, I'm going to share a story, sort of the lesson, at least the lesson I've taken from it, and how this has applied in my own life as I've worked in creativity. So the first one is about singing plants. So what you didn't know about the music that I just played is that that was actually a live stream of a snake plant living in California. What do I mean by that? Well, there is this amazing technology called plant wave. You can see it here. It sort of works like a lie detector, actually. So the idea is you put these 2 sensors on a plant. There's a current that's going between them, and they basically measure the conductivity of the water flowing through. So if you think about like a lie detector, the sweat would get, your skin would get warmer. So the idea is that the sensors measure the sort of what's happening in the plant in terms of water movement and that type of thing. So it produces a wave, and then you can put notes to the wave. So that was sort of piano or synthesizer that you heard, but it was based on the rhythm of a plant. So the music, of course, is so relaxing. I actually listened to it most of the time that I was preparing this presentation. I've been listening to the singing snake plant. But the really cool part about this is not just that we can hear plants sing. The really cool part about this is what the people who invented this technology found when they started using it. They were sort of this lab or this company where they were. And they noticed that the songs would change when they moved the plants to different areas, right? So if they put it where there was more sun, it would change the song, which makes a lot of sense because the sun and sort of the interaction with the leaves would change the way that the water flows through the plant. But here is the coolest part. And this is something, when I heard it, wow. So one day, one of the guys in the studio was just listening, and he was listening sort of to the same rhythm. The plant was making this song, and then he noticed that the song changed. And he looked up and he noticed that there was someone standing by the plant. They weren't touching it, they were just standing near it. And he thought, my gosh, I wonder what's going on there. So he went over to the person and he explained what had happened, how the song had changed. And the person said, actually, I'm not surprised. I'm a Reiki master. And he actually found this over and again with people who were botanists, florists, energy healers. When they stood near the plant's vibration, the wave actually changed. So what is the lesson that we can take from this? In terms of creativity, I think it's allowing more calm to come into our space. I think it's realizing how much other energies influence us and allow enough calm and stillness into our life to quiet the noise around us so our own creativity can emerge. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of energetic chaos in the world, right? News, social media, friends' opinions, families' opinions, society's opinions. And I think that if we can calm ourselves and calm our minds, creativity can emerge. So how did this work for me? I'll just share a quick experience. 6 years ago, I was living in New York. You can imagine the energy of that city in terms of chaos, and basically running around, overworked, overstressed, literally running from one place to another for several months. One night, I finally went to a class where the teacher just helped us sort of settle our minds, reconnect with our bodies through a series of movements and that type of thing. And so for 3 hours, I just pressed stop on the world outside, calmed myself enough. And by the end of that, I have to say, it literally felt like a plug was pulled and a drain on sort of a dirty water or chaos or whatever just was just dissipated. And I was just left feeling clear and, yes, more creative. And that was actually the night that I got the idea for the first book that I ever wrote, wherein I decided to actually give gifts myself to New York, whether it was flowers on bikes or Valentine's in the subway. And then I actually wrote a story based on the experience of giving those gifts and how it changed me. And I have to say, it was really a transformative experience because it just helped me fall in love with the city again at a time when I really needed to. And I'm not sure that that would have happened if I hadn't just said stop and sort of allowed that energy to come in. So calm, the first lesson, allowing some calm. Okay. The next lesson, I just want to take a second actually and see if you can just put into the chat really quickly, what do you think this vegetable is? If you had to guess, what would you say this vegetable is? People are gonna someone's gonna have to read it for me because I'm scared to to stop sharing my screen. I don't think I can see the chat. Rafa or Tessie, what guesses do we have?
We have beet, weird giant carrot, sweet potato, yam, large carrot, radish, sweet potato, carrot.
Amazing. Okay. So really good guess for whoever put in radish. That's exactly right. This is basically a giant radish. So what happened? If you probably can't even see it, but a radish seed is like this big. It's super, super tiny. So thinking about that as like an idea, what I want to talk about here is consistency. So the idea is the seed was planted and then the radish showed up every day and did its thing and it grew. Right? And basically, I think there's just something so powerful when we show up for practice and we produce something, anything, at least once a day. So Rafa talked about in her introduction, Seth Godin, who I also reference. He's just a giant in this space of creativity and productivity. And he, like Rafa explained, has written this blog every day, even Saturdays and Sundays for about, gosh, I don't know, 20 years, like you said. He has 7,000 posts now. And he puts it this way: if I have an idea on Monday, it's in the world on Tuesday. And that means I have to have a new idea on Tuesday. That flow has made a huge difference in my life. So I really do think there's something so powerful in creating every day. Oftentimes, if you don't have an idea, you have to dig deeper. And that's oftentimes when the gems emerge, when the diamonds emerge. And so I just wanted to talk about one project that I did where I had to work every day. And it was this idea. I was traveling to a lot of different places. Actually, I had left New York. This was 5 or 6 years ago. I was traveling to a bunch of different countries and I thought, let me do a project, something that I can ask everyone that I sort of get different perspectives on. So I decided to do something called 1 to 100. And the idea was I would ask the same question to 100 people of one every different age. So a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and on, and so on. And the question was, what do you love about being alive? And just by knowing that I had to ask this question every day, I had so many conversations with so many wonderful people. I spoke with teenagers in Colombia. I spoke with this trio of retired women who were walking across Sweden together. I met all of these incredible people. And I know that that probably wouldn't have happened, that I wouldn't have pushed myself if I didn't have this project that I was working on. And funny enough, we were talking about Creative Mornings and just sort of everything aligning. This is a woman that I met in New York. And just the kinds of conversations that I had, this just gives you a sense of what her answer was to what do you love about being alive. And she just says, that's what gets me up in the morning, the opportunity to experience the world. Just this simple, beautiful answer. But I had so many interactions like this that were just so lovely, again, because of consistency, because of having this project. And then I want to finish actually with this lesson, consistency, to add a sub lesson, which is a lesson I also learned from the radish, from the big monster radish, which is this. There can also be a time to stop. So I think when we have a project, we need to think about, are we not showing up every day because we're scared or we're procrastinating? Or is there actually something potentially draining there that's not fulfilling us anymore? So this radish, when I finally took it out of the ground, was so tough, it definitely couldn't be eaten. And the gentleman who's been working with me and teaching me how to garden explained that radish, by leaving it in so long, was actually depleting the soil, so that whatever's planted next will be missing the nutrients in the soil. And so I think there is some lesson there, because if you go and looked at the 1 to 100 page, I got to 63. And the reason for that is just at that particular moment, I moved home for personal reasons to be with family. And there was just a desire to be at home and to not leave it, to not meet new people every day. And so I would say consistency, but with a bit of tender discipline, to really be able to call and say, when something is no longer serving, it's okay, it served what it has, and you can let it go. So the final lesson I want to learn from plants comes from, well, this all goes full circle to my work in responsible mining. So you can imagine my delight a couple of weeks ago when I learned that that plants are actually mining in certain parts of the world. What does this mean? Well, there are certain plants that actually love minerals so much that they pull them up through their roots, and the minerals go into their sap. So there are these trees in Indonesia, for example, that love nickel, and as much as 25% of their sap can be made up of nickel, which is amazing, right? And so there's this process where you harvest a branch or part of the tree, you process it, and then you have nickel. So in this world of mining that I'm trying to work on, that I'm trying to improve, how amazing if we could get our metals from trees instead of carving up mountains. And the other thing is that these trees can actually go into areas where maybe the soil is depleted or it has a bunch of minerals in it and needs to kind of be cleaned up. These trees could also serve in taking the minerals out of the ground, and then it would be ready for other plants to come in, other plants that don't love such mineral-rich soil. So just thinking about these plants and sort of what they take up through their roots is consumption. And what I mean by consumption is not overconsumption or sort of what are you buying, but what are we consuming in terms of thoughts? And I think that's the final lesson that I want to think about in terms of creativity. What voices do we mostly have coming into our minds? And I'm sure you all heard this idea that we are sort of a product of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And I would just like to say, in the creative world, let's think about that a little bit. But if you look around and you think, well, in my professional life, these would be the people that I work with, or maybe a living situation, whoever it be, what I'm saying here is you don't necessarily need to change those 5 people, but you can change the 5 voices that you hear the most. And so here it's a lesson of what are you actually consuming in terms of books, podcasts, basically thoughts. What are you taking in that ultimately becomes part of you? Excuse me. And so I have 3 podcasts that I love that I think really allowed me to finally launch Green Elbows and have the bravery to do it. Sorry. So maybe I can speak through here. My partner will come and get me a drink. Okay. So we'll see if he emerges from the other room. Okay. So 3 podcasts that I listen to. The first is Seth Godin's podcast, Akimbo. So again, he's all about productivity. He's all about new ways of thinking. And he just bends my mind basically when I listen to him. Then I have the Life Coach School, and she is all about, thank you. She is all about teaching us to, hold it, I'm just kidding. She's all about really examining our thoughts. The thoughts that we have drive our emotions, that drive our actions. So basically, if something is not quite going how we want it to go, what is the thought behind it, driving it? And so that thought work has been really important. And then the final podcast is something called For the Wild. And that's very specifically related to the green world and how do we reconnect more with nature. And I will be putting all of these, I should have mentioned, I'll be putting all of these resources and such in the chat. So don't worry if you missed any of that. So basically these 3 voices all together have sort of come and helped me say, you can do it. It's time to just put your work into the world, and also have the courage to actually launch this garden project, which I don't know if I would have otherwise. I mean, it's something that has brought me so much joy. It's joy that I want to bring other people. And yet I'm still learning, right? In terms of the gardening, in terms of the plant, in terms of plant care. I think everyone is always learning, but it's to basically say, I'm learning as much as you are. Yes, plants still die under my care. And yes, I also was able to grow enough food to feed, our house for the last 5 months. So both things are true, right? You have, yes, sometimes we make mistakes, but yes, learning new things also results in success. So this thought work that I've done has allowed me to realize that both things can be true, and to believe the second thought more, to basically say, to not hold so tight to this, I can't, or I shouldn't, or it's too soon, or I don't know enough. So that's the final thing I would just say, is to think about, what are the thoughts that drive you? So those are the 3 lessons that I wanted to share from plants. And the final closing words that I want to offer are this. So total change up, leaving the green screen for the animal world. And I want to talk about this story that I read a couple of years ago on the plane that still makes me a little emotional. So I'm sorry if I get there. Do that here. Okay. So basically the story was written by this girl, and she talked about being a bit antisocial, actually. She was just really shy. She didn't love people that much. She felt like they were sort of messy and didn't want to deal with them. And so she found her solace, and she found basically a lot of joy by volunteering at a dog shelter. So she would go there and just spend time with the dogs, play with them, brush them, and just be with them. And she did this over the course of several months. And then one day, the people who were heading the shelter said, we have an adoption event today. Can you help us out? We're sort of short-staffed. So the girl went to the adoption event, and she started to see the people coming in and falling in love with the dogs. So there was a couple who lived in a 1-bedroom studio who fell in love with a Great Dane and took him home anyway, even though they didn't have any space. There was a girl, perfectly manicured, super professional, who fell in love with a little scruffy mutt and took him home. And she basically saw over the course of the day that, yes, the dogs fell in love with the owners, but more importantly, the owners fell in love with the dogs. And what she saw is that the owners had so much love to give that they basically, their hearts were so big and hungry, they wanted something to fill them. And that is why they ultimately adopted the animals. There was so much love for them to give, they needed somewhere for it to land. And so that's my final thought, is to just say, let's allow some of that love that we have to give to lead us to nature. Maybe it will be a park that you adore. Maybe it will be a tree that you caress its leaves in the morning. And I would also say, allow some of that love to fall on you. Be gentle with you. Find spaces of calm. Show up to create. Find the fuel to do so from what you consume. Just please let some of that love fall on you, knowing that you're as fragile and as worthy of love as the nature that we're working to protect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Becky. I'm sorry, a bit emotional right now, and I think most of us are. Thank you so much for sharing this with so much soul and so much thought and love. I really enjoyed it. I think that people enjoyed it as well. So if we have anyone who would like to ask a question, we have 10 minutes for Q&A. So guys, please share all your thoughts with us. You can write on the chat, or you can actually unmute yourself and just speak. Okay, don't be shy. Tina Hoffman is saying, thanks so much, such a passion we can see at your face.
I have a question.
Yes, Mariana, hi.
Okay, so hi everyone. Becca, I was wondering, why was it important for you to do a project like the 0 to 100? Why was it important for you to connect with people and understand why is it worth living, or why do they like their lives?
Exactly. I think I just wanted to understand more the unity between ages. So that project was really specific. I think in this world where there's kind of so much division, right, between people, I wanted to see through the ages from 1 to 100, what do we share? What are the commonalities? And also how do we change over time? So the idea, had I really gone through it, would be like a series of 100 over and over again, asking a different question each time to be able to show two things. One, how are some of the answers similar? And then also, what is the wisdom gained with age? So that particular one was really a specific, at trying to get at a specific question. Thank you. Very reflective.
I also have a question.
Please, Pietro. Hi.
It's really nice. It's my first time attending one of these, and I'm really glad I did. And I think I'm going to be a regular now, because this is really, really nice way to start your day. So thank you very much. It's an amazing project, and it's an amazing sharing space. So my point is, I got really curious about what you were saying about the tree mining. I found it fascinating, this capacity. I know trees are amazing beings, they're the most amazing beings ever. And I was curious if you could tell us a little bit more about how is it possible to extract those minerals from the trees without chopping them off? Is there a way, is there a technology already that we can collect that sap and process that sap in a significant way to extract those minerals? Because you were telling about 25% of that sap was the mineral, the nickel. So is it possible? Do we have the technology, the means, and is it viable? Or will it take like 10 more years to achieve that knowledge, that technology, and that balance to stop chopping and just explore, or just get those resources without damaging the trees?
I love the question, and I love where it's coming from. It's like, okay, if we're going to protect the earth, let's protect the earth, right? Which I totally hear you on. So I'll be totally honest that I read one article about this, which you can see in the New York Times. So in terms of my knowledge, I'll be very candid that it's a bit limited. That said, in the article, they speak about basically taking a part of the tree, and I think they burn it or they crush it, or perhaps it's both. So whether it's they're chopping the whole tree down or they're actually pruning it, to be honest, I'm still not totally clear. I suppose one way to look at it, at least the way that I looked at it, was we already grow groves of trees to harvest for lumber, paper, whatever we're using wood for. So if this is done and these trees are grown with this express purpose in mind, I mean, and also if you think about, the trees are actually going into a place where there weren't plants before. So it's not as though it's cutting down old growth forest or forest, that would be very hard to replicate. It's more like a crop. That was the way that I understood it anyway. And in terms of actually processing it, in terms of viability, sorry, that was your other question, I do think it's actually a ways off, sadly. I wish that I could say it was closer and that was the way that we're going to turn, because, I mean, I'd be out of a job, but that's okay. But it would be for good reason. But I do think it's a way off to get to scale. But really good question. For me, I'm super, super fascinated by it.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I was just worried because sometimes these new ideas and these new resources are not very sustainable. So because if we raise the issue, okay, we're devastating forests in Borneo to grow palm trees to make palm tree oil. So okay, we're planting a lot of trees, but that's a monoculture, so that's not really sustainable, and it's not really good for the environment. So I'm always trying to think what's the trade-off of these new possibilities, because I think it's fascinating that we can extract minerals through trees. But sometimes I get worried about these new ideas that sound very interesting in their genesis. The core of the idea is really interesting, but then the way they are exploited most of the times are not so. They tend sometimes to be damaging to the environment, instead of something that looks, oh, we're planting loads of trees. Yeah, but you're planting a monoculture, so that's not a. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll look up. And if you can share that article in the resources,
it's in the note.
that would be nice.
Yeah, for sure. It's in the notes there.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pietro. No questions.
Hi.
I have a question.
Yes.
I wanted to ask Becky, so you obviously have your community garden that you're starting, but what is your next creative writing project that you're going to be pursuing?
Caught in the moment. Creative writing project. I am working on a book actually about finding home. So it is related to the travel that I did that I was talking about, where I interviewed all of those different people. And then actually living at home, I returned home after living away for, gosh, a dozen or so years, and sort of what I learned during that period. And then that was followed by another period of travel. So sort of these 3 chapters, and what do they teach us about finding home? There you go.
Great. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. So Rafa, while we're waiting for some more questions, I want to also keep another promise that we made, which is that we have a little bit of a gift for you. So back when Rafa asked me to be the speaker, I started to propagate these little succulents, which I showed you at the very first. And so I did a whole bunch of them. And basically, you can go and pick up one of these little babies in Lisbon. They're waiting for you, all in bags and ready to go. So there are a limited number, but I think there are probably enough for the people here. So please just direct message me on Instagram before you go. So just send a direct message just so that I can keep track. And so I know if we're meeting the limit or not. But basically there are these little succulents, and they are at Rejvej co-working space, which is very near Ratu. Sorry, I totally just spelled it wrong. Rejvej. Okay, Rejvej co-working. Thank you, Rafa. So you can go. They're actually sitting under a big succulent tree that's been decorated for Christmas. So all your baby succulents are under the big succulent there. Please go pick up a bag. It has a little baby succulent. And if you can go now, like today at some point, that would be awesome, because they're all in bags and succulents need a lot of sun. So please go rescue the little baby succulents so they can have some sunshine. So for anyone in Lisbon, that is for you. It's our small gift to you from Creative Mornings.
Hi.
Becky, thank you for your generosity. I'm going to pick mine today or tomorrow. So I hope that I'll meet some of other people there too. Do we have any more questions?
I do actually. Hi.
Bruno, I know you.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So from what I understood about the plants, the mining perspective on plants, how much they absorb from their environment, and like that compounds into their growth. I would just like to ask, what do you absorb like from plants into your life, and how has it's like changed you in the past years since you discovered it?
Very beautiful question. Thank you so much for that. For me, I would say plants are a source of joy, honestly, a source of seeing a miracle. I'm just going to show you one of my favorites. Actually, I had it here, and you've opened up a perfect pint. I got this from IKEA. It had like 20 leaves on it when I bought it. By the time I got to the register, 10 of them had fallen off. And by the time I brought it home, there was 1 leaf left. But I saw a little bit of green in the branches, and I was like, I think I can bring this baby home. So you can see the 1 leaf. This is the only one original leaf. And then all of these are little baby leaves. And honestly, just the joy of seeing this plant come back to life is like momentous. It's amazing. And then, so that's one thing. And then I would just say it's the actual pace of plants, right? They have this rhythm. They do their thing. They follow just like a natural slow pace. And that has been such a joy to bring into my life, is just like the slowing that plants foster. And I think it's really in rhythm with our natural selves, actually. And so I would say being around plants has allowed me to slow down, to stop, to appreciate, and to not have such a frenetic mind, basically. Thank you. Rafa, I think you're still on mute.
I'm sorry, guys. I've been doing this for 8 months, but I still juggle with Zoom. So thank you so much, Bruno, for your question. And thank you, Becky, for your beautiful answer. So I'm not sure, we're running out of time, so I'm not sure if we still have any questions left for Becky. No? Monica?
Yes,
Hi.
yes, I would
No?
like. Rebecca, can you tell us just a little bit more about the community garden that you're organizing in Ericeira? I think it's a very lovely project. I wish I lived closer so I could pitch in, but as well because I just, as you know, and I just moved recently to the countryside. I lived all my life in Lisbon, and now I'm in the district of Coimbra. I'm going to buy a place in the countryside soon, and I'm moving into the country, and I'm really interested in rewilding and reforesting. And I would like you to tell us a little bit more about your project in Ericeira, about that plot that you're planning.
Okay, thank you so much. And there's actually a couple people on here. Hi, Emily, who are going to be part of it, which I'm super, super excited about. And I think Nico is still here, but I can only see a certain number of faces on my screen. Okay, the project is, I'm calling it the Garden Lab. And the reason for that is that it is more than a community garden. The idea being to bring together a community, but basically to help people all along the way. So it's a year-long guided project wherein we'll meet together in February, we'll plan our plots, we'll learn the basics of gardening and sort of some principles that we need to know. And we'll actually do a sketch and say what we want to plant and where. And then we'll get together at late February, early March, and do our first planting together, where I'll teach the techniques, provide the tools, provide the seeds and seedlings. Basically, you show up, all you need are your gloves and boots, and I'll provide the rest. So all the instruction, all the materials, and the idea, again, is to take away any intimidation factor from this, to help people just know that it's not so difficult. I remember when I started my first garden, I had a call with my sister and father, and one of them at the beginning of the call, they basically just stopped and said, well, you know, it's really hard growing a garden. And then they paused for a moment and they both just laughed. And they were like, not at all. It's totally approachable. It's totally something you can do. The sun, the water, and the plants do most of the work anyway, which is very true. So that's the idea, is to take through a year-long program. And then I also call it the Garden Lab because we'll be exploring a lot of different methods. So we'll be thinking about what plants grow well together. We'll be exploring planting by the phases of the moon. The lunar cycle actually impacts plants a lot in terms of their health. So we'll be exploring a lot of different methods, basically. And yeah, be growing a lot of beautiful, delicious vegetables in a little town close to Ericeira here.
Cool. I hope I can come and visit and work with you a little bit.
Yes, you'll be so welcome.
Cool. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we should wrap up. It's almost 10 a.m. and we don't want you to get fired from your jobs and from your normal lives. So please share your love for Becky at her social media, Green Elbows on Instagram, and share your love with us too on Creative Mornings Lisbon on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you so much, Becky, for sharing all your beautiful thoughts with us and your creativity. You inspired us a lot, and you inspire us on a daily basis. So thank you so much. And thanks for
so much. Thank you all so much for coming. And please remember to go pick up your little babies. Thank you. Thank you. It was so nice to spend the morning with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. You rock.
Guys.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.
Have a beautiful Friday.